Hello. Today's stories come from r/malicious compliance. There are 3 stories today. The first story is an example of malicious compliance we don't often get to see on this subreddit. OP's boss gives him a bit of a stab in the back, and it has immediate consequences. Story 1 is titled, "If I don't like it, I can find another job? Okay." I think this qualifies. I worked at a small shop serving an electrical apprenticeship. Myself and the shop manager had had a few run-ins, and I assume he disliked me as much as I disliked him. I had refused to do a job and told him he didn't pay me enough. It was at the stockyards, and I was expected to put on a set of waders, crawl down into a raw fat reclamation tank, and replace a submersible pump. Wasn't going to happen. Another time, he wanted me to lie to a customer to make an issue they were having sound like it wasn't our fault. I refused and told him if he wanted to lie about it, he was going to have to drive out to the job site and do it himself. He told me to keep my mouth shut and did come out. I think the only reason he didn't fire me was I was by far one of the most efficient and versatile employees. This fact had me questioning how much I was getting out of this apprenticeship and was passively looking around for another shop to apprentice at. My wage scale was structured, and I got regular raises, bringing me closer to journeyman's level over my time as an apprentice. So, I had to find someone that would sign up to complete my apprenticeship as well as want to hire me. One of our better journeymen had gone to another shop and had introduced me to the owners. We had talked about what it would take to get me to move. Things were progressing, but nothing committed to at that point. Cue the malicious compliance. It's my evaluation and raise time. My manager calls me up to the conference room and explains that due to my performance and the shop being in a slow period, he was not going to give me the 25 cents an hour raise, even though that was on my contract, and said they were going to give me $1 more an hour once I became a journeyman. We argued, and I told him if I can't trust you for a quarter, why would I believe the $1? The argument ended in him telling me if you don't like it, you can always quit. Oh, really? I picked up the conference room phone on the table in front of us and called the shop I had been talking with. I asked the owner if I brought my tools over today, would I have a job? After a quick and uncomfortable discussion with his partner, he said yes. I informed my manager I resigned effective now. I loaded my tools up, punched out, and went straight to work that afternoon. Edit. Well, now I know what rest in peace my inbox means. It figures that my single largest post or comment is one where I am a complete jerkhole. My wife and daughter are laughing and apparently find that fitting. I would like to state a couple of things. I was only a couple years out of the Marine Corps and was young and arrogant. I was still adjusting to civilian life. 0 out of 10 do not recommend this course of action. Yes, it was a breach of contract, but I left before I lost anything, so didn't feel it was a reasonable thing to sue over. OP gave some extra details in the comments. Sanguinius Swept said, "Why was the discussion between the new shop owner and his partner uncomfortable? Did one of them not want you there?" Waffle Time Warp said, "I think it was a short discussion on the other end of the phone while OP and their then boss sat and stared at each other." OP replied, "This." Real Ultimate Papo said, "Quitting right in front of your manager must have rendered them completely speechless. Would have loved to hear their reaction. A ballsy maneuver, but it seems like it was totally worth it." OP replied, "Ha, that was 25 years ago and I still cherish the look on his face." Clever Username added, "I feel so much vicarious satisfaction at the idea. Can you describe that moment and his facial expressions, please? I want to savor it." OP replied, "I swear I remember him having a crap look, only his eyes went slightly cross for a sec when he sighed." I bet they did. He realized he just sunk himself. You'd think these managers would learn not to push their best performing employees out the door, but they never do. Shaking my head. Story 2 has an entitled Karen of a caller choosing her words poorly, trying to finesse a discount from OP. It is titled, "Cancel the Service? You Bet." I work in roadside assistance as a third party for a lot of insurance companies. Like most customer service jobs, we get a heck of a lot of abuse. But most of it comes from long wait times and/or not being fully covered. This happens often, but I very rarely am in the position where I get to see the fallout. Recently, I had a woman call in. She was completely pleasant, but in a huge rush, So she was a little snippy. No worries, I get it. But then it comes to letting her know that she is not covered for assistance and she has a huge out-of-pocket expense. She whines about the fact that she knows she has roadside. Then, that she supposedly set up the service earlier, so not only am I trying to charge her, but it's taking too long and therefore the price should be waived. Finally, she gives up and tells me I'm useless and says, "Just cancel it," and hangs up. Being the good rep that I am, I call her back to confirm the disconnect was intentional. She picks up, then hangs up immediately, then sends me to voicemail on follow-up calls. So as instructed, I canceled the job request. I should note, intake doesn't take long, but it's annoying to go over, and if the customer doesn't know their exact location, like being on a freeway, it can take some time. A few hours later, I get a new call from an angry customer wondering where her service is at. I apologize for the frustration, ask for her reference number, and inform her that unfortunately, there isn't any service in the system. She starts going off. I do my best to calm her down and extract the needed information. Halfway through the call, I realize it's the same angry pants woman as before. When we start going over location, I remember the drop-off location and she gets excited and says, "Oh, you found my service? Is the driver on the way? It's ridiculous that it's taking this long. You should get this prioritized or expedited." To which I reply in my nicest customer service representative voice, "No, ma'am, your service isn't in the system. I remember when we spoke earlier. As you requested, I canceled the job at that time, so it is only getting open now and the amount will be X." Her, "That's more than it was earlier." Yes, the pricing changes through our day to continuously match the market, stay competitive, and incentivize drivers to continue taking jobs at unpopular times. She's silent. Also, we have longer estimated times of arrival at this time, so you will want to get this payment taken care of as soon as possible so we can find a service provider to avoid a longer wait. I can send a text message to you to complete payment. But I never told you to cancel it before. I start to lose my patience. Ma'am, our calls are recorded. I notate obsessively, and I called you back multiple times trying to confirm. I want to speak to your supervisor. Ranting to make me scared. No problem. One moment. It looks like there is currently a 20-minute wait for a supervisor. I'm happy to wait with you. Fine. Get my service started. Certainly. I'll send the text for payment. She finally broke down and paid it and gave up waiting for a supervisor. She swore up and down that she was going to report me. Either way, I felt vindicated with my tiny bit of malicious compliance. OP stuck around to give a bit more info in the comments. In response to, "I'm happy to wait with you," Motor 1 is stopping said, "That would be awesome. Both of you sitting on the phone, hating each other and saying nothing while waiting for the supervisor to enter the fray and get completely blindsided by the fury that has already erupted." OP replied, "Oh, it's always my favorite. We don't have supervisor callbacks until the service is completed. So at least once a week, I get paid to scroll Reddit or a webtoon while listening to the muffled ranting of an angry customer stuck on the side of the road." Jilst shared, "I work in a bank, and there are some things we have no control over. Interest rates, the terms and conditions they signed for, our bank transfer limits. I absolutely love it when customers get angry and say, 'Fine, I'll just close all my accounts then.' 'Sure, I can do that. Is a check okay?' They immediately start backtracking as I'm typing away on the computer, knowing full well it was an empty threat." OP shared, "I love it when people bring up legal action when in customer service because 1, why would that scare me? I'm not the one you were suing. 2, I now, by policy, can't speak to you. Same thing for going to the media threats. Like, please remember I am simultaneously being paid while you are wasting your time, depleted of Fs, not paid enough to de-escalate you when you have gone that far." Yes, makes you wonder how often OP revels in canceling a service on a Karen. That's right, folks. Every single day. I'll bet you she does. Our third story is my favorite of this bunch and takes us back to a different time and circumstances a bit tougher than most people might be accustomed to. Story 3 is titled, "I Don't Want the Car." I'm not a malicious person, though I do feel some joy reading this sub. First off, My dad was a great man. He was just dumb sometimes. Some background. I am one of the youngest from a very large family. My mom passed away when I was 10. My dad, bless his heart, was from the generation where the man worked and the woman took care of everything at home. When my mom passed away, the responsibility of everything at home fell to the kids. By the time I was 11, I was regularly cooking dinner for 8 to 10 people. I had a long list of chores. Truly, it was fine. I'm sure I pitied myself some because my friends didn't have these responsibilities, but I really had a great childhood, minus the dead mom thing. When I was 16, my dad got me a car. I paid for gas with babysitting money. My dad paid for insurance and maintenance. I had to get my little sister and myself to and from school. I had to do the grocery shopping. I had to get the two of us to practices and meets. I had to run chores. I was responsible for driving her wherever she needed to go. My day consisted of getting to school, getting home, grocery store, making dinner if it was my turn, homework, practice, bed. Meets were on weekends. I never went out. I was never in trouble. I was an honor student. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I was a good kid. All was well, relatively. And then my dad got a new girlfriend. Her kids were in high school with me. She told him that if I got to have a car, I should be fully responsible for it. After all, her kids were. So my dad sat me down and said, "I've decided that if you want a car, you have to pay for it. I expect you to take over payments, maintenance, and insurance." I told him I couldn't afford that. He told me I'd have to get a job. I said I had no time for a job. He told me I'd have to figure it out. So, cue malicious compliance, I guess. I went and got my keys and handed them to him. I told him I didn't want the car anymore. He was a little shocked, but I guess he thought I'd come crawling back for it soon. The next morning, my sister and I missed the bus. I had to wake him up so he could drive us to school. He was miffed. We got a ride home from school. At 5:30, when dinner was supposed to be on the table, I was reading on the couch. He came home. "Where is dinner?" I said, "Oh, I didn't have a car to get to the store. I'm sure there are some leftovers you can heat up." He told me I'd have to start walking to the store. I told him I didn't have time. Finals were coming up. Didn't he care about my grades? An hour later, I told him it was time for practice. My sister and I needed a ride to and from practice. He told me to call a friend. Sorry, I can't. No one on the team lives in this town. It would be really out of the way for anyone else. He drove us. Then he picked us up, silently fuming the whole way. The next morning, oops, we missed the bus again. I had to wake him up again. Plus, he had no orange juice in the morning, on account of no one going to the store. Once again, no dinner on the table. He had to drive me to the store when he got home. Once again, we needed a ride to practice. I informed him that the meet that weekend was an hour away and we had to be there at 9. That was enough for him. It was probably the most parenting he'd done in 30 years of being a father. He called me to the top of the stairs. He tossed my car keys up to me. "I've decided you can have your car back. I'll pay for half of the payment and half of the insurance. You can only use it for school, practice, meets, chores, and driving your sister." I laughed, tossed the keys back, and said, "That's all I use it for anyway. I don't want the car. Sell it." 5 minutes later, he's screaming my name from the bottom of the stairs. He overhand whips the keys up the stairs. Y'all, my dad never got mad. His new deal was he'd pay for everything but gas, but I wasn't allowed any personal use of the car. I said, "So I have to pay to do chores and I get no benefit from it? No, thank you." And I tossed the keys back down the stairs. Half an hour later, he demands my presence in the living room. He calmly said he would pay for everything but gas. I'd have the use of the car when I wanted, but I had to do all the stuff I'd previously been doing without complaint until his girlfriend got into his head. He didn't phrase it like that, of course. Then he said, "I hope you learned a lesson here." I did. I certainly did. Edit. Y'all, please refrain from calling my dad a piece of trash, etc. He died several years ago. I loved him very much, and you're bumming me out. He raised us to the best of his abilities. His kids are happy, fairly successful, and very, very close. Please just enjoy the story of malicious compliance and teenage triumph. OP gave a lot of extra details in the comments. Bevasumi said, "Guess he learned his lesson." On the side, what happened with the girlfriend and her kids? OP replied, "They broke up years later. She was awful. We nicknamed her Satan, and her daughters were equally awful." Coder Joe said, "Why wasn't Satan grocery shopping, cooking, and taxiing you and your siblings around?" OP replied, "They were just dating. She didn't live with us." LD Machiavelli said, "Wait, she wasn't even living there and making demands like that?" OP replied, "It wasn't a demand. She just got into his head. She made it seem like her daughters were so much more responsible than his because they paid for their own cars. He just didn't appreciate that his daughters had a crapload of responsibilities on us already." OP said, "Of course I was parentified. We all were. We didn't really have another option. If we wanted to stay together, we had to make it work. We did what we had to do." Flash 101 said, "How old are you now? How are you doing? How are your siblings doing? How's your father doing? I'm so invested. Also, so sorry for your loss." Broken heart emoji. "I can't even imagine losing a parent and being that responsible at such a young age. Yes, you were a good kid, and I'm sure even a better person now." OP shared, "I'm in my 40s, married with 2 kids. My family is great. We are all really close. We text and talk all the time. About 60 of us got together for Christmas. My dad passed away 12 years ago. He wasn't able to meet 7 of his grandchildren or his 6 great-grandchildren. He would have loved to see the legacy he's left behind. He really did his best and raised us with so much love. Not a ton of competence, but definitely a lot of love." I found this story so heartwarming. OP seems like such a wonderful person. She wasn't even angry at her dad. She totally understood his limitations and didn't take his lack of appreciation personally. Just an all-around great story. I bet they have the best holiday get-togethers. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.